Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. We have a fascinating guest today that I'm super excited to hear about her and what she's been doing. We've got Doni Belau here. She's the founder of Girls Guide to the World. Did I pronounce your last name right? Because we just mentioned that right before I pushed the record button. Are we good?
Yeah, it's Belau. It's Belau. You were very close. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Well, I appreciate you joining me here. You and I had a conversation, a couple weeks ago, and I was just kind of really fascinated about what you're doing because it's different. There's some other people that are doing similar things, but I think your approach is different. So I want to kind of get into that a little bit. But before we get into your business, I always am interested in the story. Like, how did you and I end up here having this conversation today? How did you get from where you started to where you are now? So I don't know how far back we need to go, but let's go as far back as you think is relevant.
Yeah. Well, this is actually my third career. I started Girls Guide 15 years ago. Basically, was trying to escape working in not-for-profit and political realm because it's a kind of a burnout field. Saving the world, if you will, is pretty exhausting, although really interesting. And we've had a place in Paris for about 24 years or so. We had a place in France, one way or another, and I think I just wanted to do something a little bit lighter, less heavy, and more sort of really just it was a passion, and I started out. Thinking that I was going to create, and I did create, a content-focused website around Paris. So it used to be called Girls Guide to Paris. I had no business plan. I had no idea how I was going to make money. It was just, the exact opposite of doing it the Harvard Business School way. So I always say I could write a book about how not to start a business. You can take advice from me and do everything opposite. Anyway, about 2 years in, we started doing the tours. Finally, that was some way to make money. As you know, the content area is an incredibly difficult place to make money. So eventually we morphed into really the premier women's only tour organizations in the world. We now from, starting with one tour and then 2 tours a year just in France and then moving further and further outside of France. Now we, next year, 2025, we have 65 trips going to 40 different countries. So it was organic.
Wow.
But it's really blossomed.
I've got quite a few questions, but I want to start with, because you kind of mentioned, like, I didn't really have a business plan. This was just kind of passion project. And what do you think it was that really made it work? What do you think was the brilliance behind that approach? Because I know there is some.
Yeah, well, again, I don't think that I had figured out how to bottle lightning, in the beginning. It was something that has morphed into what it is. So today, and I could say looking back that this was my grand plan, but it wasn't. I mean, it really was a learning process. But I've always enjoyed empowering women, bringing women together. I love travel. And I love, seeing the world. I love meeting new people. So all of that sort of, which is part of me, has come together into this business. And it is really wonderful if you can find a way to bring those things that you already are good at, that you already are passionate about, and make them into some way to make a living. And, it is kind of, I feel like a little bit of a miracle that all of this has worked. But it's obviously, it has been hard work, and I've had a lot of help along the way. But at this point, what's I think special and unique about it, and that that's something that we kind of organically discovered as we went along. So of course, everything in the beginning was just I'm doing everything, and now I've got a great team, and my husband is on board helping me. He's a tech guy, and he's really helped us expand because he had a big company himself, so he knows sort of the hard business side of it. But the special quality of this I think the piece that has really worked is the idea that women, particularly over 45, but we have ladies join our trip. You'd only have to be 21, and as long as you can walk, you can be 101. So anybody from 21 to 101 can join. But the idea is keep these groups small, 6 to 10, so that women have the chance to bond and really meet each other, like-minded women who love to travel or who are just getting out there traveling. And they've maybe been held back. Either they were busy with their career or with family or with both. Busy or just waiting around really for someone to go with. Maybe they don't have a partner. Maybe their friends can't or don't want to go to the same places that they do. So we feel like we're offering a really much needed service to those 53% of women in the United States, at least, who are single, either divorced, never married, or widowed. And then you've got lots of women in addition, including myself, who are married or partnered up in one way or another, but their partner can't travel, doesn't want to travel to that place, whatever the reason may be. Or, it's just really nice to get out and, on your own, do something on your own. It's empowering. It just brings you back to life after, 6 months or a year, or God forbid, even longer without any time away. It's rejuvenating for a relationship too. So that
Very, very
special
cool.
quality of bringing women together is really what this is about. And not anybody else is really doing it the same way that we are, keeping it super small. It's quite upscale. So, women who, it's not luxury for luxury's sake, but it's women who want to, see the world, but, with some nice sheets and a king size bed and maybe a glass of wine or two at night,
Hence the minimum age requirement of 21.
Exactly.
Well, of course, that's there's other places in the world that's different. But actually, so what I heard in that was kind of the brilliance in your business and getting started. And what I found inspiring when I heard you was you just took action. You did something, right? That's like, I don't have a business plan. I don't know where this is going, but I know I have a passion. And instead of waiting, because you used the word waiting a few times in that in what you just told me as well. Instead of waiting, you're like, I'm just going to do this. I'll figure it out along the way. And then I hear you speaking kind of to our listeners, to your potential clients as well. It's like, don't spend time waiting. Just go do it. We've got the opportunity. Go with a group of women and go do something. Just take some action. So I think it's brilliant that you did it, because I suspect there's an awful lot of people that either are listening or would listen to this podcast that would love to start a travel business. If I was sitting at home wanting to start a travel business, I'd be listening to this podcast. So that's the reason I want to touch on this, is just take some action. You don't have to have the website all fleshed out. You don't have to have necessarily the business plan. All this stuff is just take some action and start following your dreams, which is what you did, and it worked. So congratulations. That's very cool.
Now, of course, it's harder that way. So I'm not necessarily saying that this is the way to do it, because it took me a little bit too long to make this profitable, like definitely too long. So I think, if I were to give someone advice who wanted to start a business, and actually I just spoke to someone yesterday, I'd love to encourage other women to do, any entrepreneurial thing that they have in mind. I'm really, I'm just really here to support women in whatever way I can. But I spoke to a lady, actually, she's out of Switzerland yesterday, who wants to start a business. And I think there is, it's true with every business. You have this kind of glamorous idea, and it really is a great job. I love what I do, but it is work at the end of the day. You are taking care of people. You're creating itineraries. There's a lot to it. So I suggested to her, if you can, start small and, really just take a group of your friends away at first and see if you really like doing this. Because
Right.
even when it's your friends, it's still work. It is work.
Maybe,
It's not
maybe
like
more,
going on
maybe
vacation.
more work. Maybe more
Exactly. Your
work.
friends can be the most difficult of all.
I think if you can
Totally.
take a group of girlfriends on a trip and not want to kill anybody before it's over, then, I mean, I don't know. I've never been on a women's
Exactly.
only trip, but I'm guessing it's the same way with guys. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's take some action, because I think that's where people get into trouble, is they just don't take any action. It's like,
Right.
oh, I
No.
want to do this. I want to do this, but they get overwhelmed. Like, oh, think of all the things that are going to be involved. I got to have the business plan and the this and the that and the this.
Right.
But you're right. It just start small, take some sort of action. For some people, that might be a website. If they really like websites and they know how to build a website, they might just build a website. Or for me, I've started a couple businesses just by buying a domain name, just taking some action, just like thinking about, okay, what would this business, what would I want to call it? And then as soon as I bought the domain name, oh, maybe I'll change my signature block. Maybe I'll put something on my social media. And then it just kind of keeps going and going. And it's so much better than waiting until all of the ducks are in a row to take any sort of action. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think it's brilliant.
Absolutely. I think it's
great advice.
Important thing to remember in life is that fear, or this idea that we have to have everything all aligned perfectly figured out. It's not possible to have everything figured out before. It's like trying to have a baby and know exactly how you're going to parent and how much time. It's not possible. I mean, this is a learn by doing business. Now, if you've already, worked in the travel world, great. You've got a leg up, but I don't think that should stop you. And also, with regard to people coming on trips or doing whatever it is that their dreams are, inside each one of us, we all have these dreams and aspirations. And a lot of us just keep pushing those down and stop, saying, well, that's not possible, or that's not okay. Who are you to think so big, or whatever it is, all that sort of negative voice that's in your head. And this is a very short, precious time that we have on this planet. And I was listening, and I was on another podcast, and this lady said, who's a coach, life coach, she said, it's your obligation to fulfill those dreams. If it's not your obligation, it's not anyone's. So if you're not going to do it, who the heck can? You can't sit in your house and wait for life to happen. You've got to go out the door and as you said, take some action. Even if it's going in the wrong direction, you can always pivot. So I agree. If you want to start a business, if you want to go on a trip, if you want to buy a house in Italy, whatever it is, it's all possible as long as you don't stop yourself.
Absolutely. And this subject of travel, adventure travel, whatever words we want to use, is a real metaphor for life, because it's get up and go. And in travel, that's clear. We understand what we're talking about, but that's in life as well. And I think anybody listening to this, I'm sure you know people, and I know people that I've heard for years say, and I'm not speaking of anybody in specific, just in case my mom's listening to this. I've always wanted to go to Scotland. I've always wanted to go to Scotland. Mm-hmm. I'm really into Scotland. I've always wanted to go. Okay, then go.
Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go. Well, I don't want to go by myself. Okay, guess what? I know Doni.
Yep.
I don't know if you're doing Scotland, but it's like, just
you
go.
Bet. Of course we do Scotland. Scotland's amazing. My son went to school there. We do a great trip to Scotland, and everybody has always loved it.
So maybe I'll make sure she does listen to this, because that's exactly the type of trip that I think would be a lot of fun for her. And but it could be anything. It could be somebody saying, I've always wanted to go to Southeast Asia. Okay, for whatever reason. Okay, what's the first step? Maybe it's a passport. For a lot of people who live in the U.S., it's a passport. That's
right.
Because there's so many people in the U.S. that talk about, I've always wanted to go here. I want to go there. I want to go there. But they haven't even got the passport yet. It's like, okay, just start with that. Just start with
That's
that.
Right.
You don't have to figure
That's
out
an action
where
that
exactly.
Is not that difficult. Right.
Yeah, you don't have to book the plane flights right now. You don't have to pick the hotel. Just go get the passport. And then there's a book. It was very popular. I worked in real estate for a while, and it was by Gary Keller, and I think it was The One Thing. And it's, what's the one thing I can do today that will make everything else easier? And if you want to go to Scotland, well, what's the one thing you can do today? Maybe
Right.
it's, go down to the post office, go down and get your picture taken. So now you've got those pictures in your hand. Well, I might as well walk over to the post office and set up an
Right.
appointment for a passport. And then once you've got the passport, then it just got a lot easier, and then you figure out, well, what's the next thing? And just take those little steps, but you have to take action. Because if you don't take action,
Exactly.
Last year at this time, I was like, I think I want to do a podcast,
Why not?
and here we are, we've got, by the time our listeners are listening to this, we'll be at about 90 episodes, just a little over a year. And I had no idea what that was going to turn into. I thought, well, I'll do a couple and just have a couple of conversations. Then once I've got the recorded conversations, I'll figure out, well, what do I do next? And so anyway, I love that you brought up that you didn't have a business plan. So thank you, because that created this whole opportunity for this conversation. And
That's great.
I know there's other things,
Yes,
to discuss. Because I want to make sure that anybody that's listening to this, I think they probably already feel a connection. You're easy to connect with. So let's really help them see what possibilities are out there. Do you do only organized set departure group tours? Or if somebody came to you and said, me and my girlfriends want to go here, can you do a custom trip for them as well? Or just tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you can do for them.
You bet. So our primary business are these group tours, and we have created everything from, we have the first trip in 2025 is a retreat with a life coach. So going back to when I started the business, I really attribute being able or having the courage to start this business because of a life coach and that experience. So I'm a big believer in getting coaches for whatever it is that you are struggling with or are stuck with, or in a transition and you just don't even know what you want to do. So we do a number of retreats each year, but that's our first one in January, because January is a great time to, really take a look at what you want to do, what's going on this year. And then we do everything from that to like trekking with gorillas. So we've got a huge amount of trips on offer. So, but the reason why that's the primary business is because I said that I'm not sure if I actually, I guess it specified this, and that's what I'm trying to say. But it's 85, or I think somewhere between 80 and 85% of women, 80 to 85% of solo travelers are women, which is interesting. And most of those, some 80% of those, are women over 45. So that makes sense, because after 45, you've maybe got the kids at least in high school, or you've got your career in a place where you can take more time. You've got more time, more money. And because there's so many single women out there, it's really offering a service. So you've got 65 trips to select from. But let's say you and your family, or like you're looking at my website and you say, oh, I'd really like to go trekking with gorillas, but I know that my family and my teenager, college age kids would love that. I just couldn't do that without them, because they would just be pissed at me, right? We create private trips for any group that wants. So we can really take you anywhere in the world with any group you want. Obviously, if it's just two of you or just one of you, it is a lot more expensive than if it's 5 or 6 of you, because it all depends. So we have done everything from recently this year, we did a trip for a lady who just retired as a school teacher. So she wanted to spend 6 weeks in France, and she went all over France. She drove herself. So we put the whole thing together, but it was a DIY in general. She had a couple of tour guides here and there. And then we've got a family going to Australia for Christmas. So, we can do any of those type of things. It is, I would say, not as big of the rest of it is kind of a bigger part of our business. However, we know that we want to be a full service organization for anyone who also, maybe has 4 or 5 friends and wants to go with them. So we do that all the time.
I'm trying to envision how that got started, and it's not hard to envision. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm envisioning one of the ladies that goes on a trip with you, and she's like, wow, this is amazing. I would love for my husband, my kids, my whatever to see this. And she's like, Doni, can you set that up? Because I want to go back to either the same place, similar experience, whatever, but I suspect that's where that, what we'd call the FIT or the, the
Yeah.
custom itinerary
Yep.
business. Is that kind of where that started, I'm guessing?
Yeah. And then other people who just looked at the website, they got excited about one of the trips, but then their husband, this happened one day, said, but I want to go. And then all their friends wanted to go. And then, so I said, okay, well, we'll put it together for you guys. I mean, you've got to
Uh-huh.
be, as a business owner, as you know, you've got to be able to, um, not be so rigid. You've got to go with the flow and really help people in whatever way that you can. And we love to do that. We love to create, bespoke special experiences for, women. We've done it in New Zealand, we've done it in South Africa, all over the place, you name it.
That's,
Because,
that's
we've
so
been
cool.
to a lot of countries now. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we can do it almost everywhere.
You mentioned, I have to go back to this because you mentioned the stat and it's the first I'd heard it. And I'm still trying to get my head around it. You'd mentioned 80 to 85, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said 80 to 85% of the solo travelers are women, which,
Isn't that amazing?
yeah, it frankly blows my mind a little bit. Help, I don't know, help me get my head around that because you've thought about this obviously a lot. Why is
Yep.
that the
Well,
case? What am I missing?
there's an organization. There's an organization called Journey Women, and so they've done a lot of the research on this. So that's one of their stats. And then, of course, I'm plugged into all the women's only groups, and I'm part of Women's Travel Leaders. It's what it's interesting, but it's when you think of the adventure traveler, it's actually a woman. There's more women out there traveling alone than men. It's like a huge, huge amount more. And I don't know. I think it goes back to, and I would, this is anecdotal, and I'm not a scientist or a researcher, but the at 50 years old, and I listened to this is years ago now. I think it was on NPR. I listened to a woman who was a sociologist who said, at 50, our hormones are shifting quite a bit, both men and women. Women, because it makes sense, kids are mostly grown, you're in a different place and there's a hormone change. Women get more adventurous and men become more into
Oh,
nesting,
okay.
cooking, like gardening, staying at home. So there's actually, and there's, hormonal sort of reasons for this. And it's really interesting. So, because all these women that we take hundreds of women every year, and they will say, and especially those who do have a partner, well, he just doesn't really want to go anywhere anymore, and I do. I've got X number of years left to travel, and I want to travel. So, we see it, and then the evidence is also in the research. So it's fascinating. It's
It's
fascinating.
interesting because
Obviously,
I've
there's plenty of solo travelers that are men too, but a lot more women. I mean, I saw it when I walked the Camino, Camino de Santiago in Spain, that comes from all different places in Europe. Many more people who are walking it alone were women.
it's thank you because now I'm starting to see it. There's another, we speak a little bit about hormones and life changes, and I'm kind of into some of that stuff. And
Yeah.
I think John Gray and various other writers have talked about, as women get older, the hormones shift and they generally become a little bit, more independent. I don't want to necessarily use the terms masculine and feminine, but guys also kind of shift the other way to where they're a little bit more kind of the teddy bear, kind of just like want to hang out at home, where when they were 24, you couldn't get them to sit down and sit still.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
I can see that. And I suspect that.
Yeah, just to back up what I said, I'm just looking it up because you know how it is when someone asks you, you're worried, did I get those stats wrong? But Condor Ferries, out of the UK, they did a analysis. 84% of solo travelers are women. PBS reported 85% of their solo travelers after the pandemic are women. Travel Bug Tonic, 84% of solo travelers are women. There's like 10 sources if you Google it. So it's really,
awesome.
It is really shocking.
So now let's take that and speak directly to the woman that has been like, I want to go, but women don't travel alone. I can't travel alone. The world is
Yeah.
a big, dangerous
Yeah.
place. How can I possibly travel
Yep.
alone? Because she's got this story. Now she just heard you say 85% of solo travelers are women, which hopefully will cause her to reflect on, oh, maybe the story in my head is just a story in my head. Okay. And realistically, they've got some concerns. So let's address those most common concerns that you've
Yeah.
seen with women that keep them from traveling, so we can address them head on, and maybe someone will take action and go get a passport today when they're done listening.
Yeah, Jason, I really appreciate that question because, again, we go back to what we were talking about before, but fear stops us, right? And we know that fear stops us. And it doesn't mean that you want to just discard fear and just go, walk down the street, half naked in the middle of the night. That's not smart, Yeah, I'm not running over to Jordan right now, even though I know people who are still traveling there. You know, we of course do not ever go to places that we do that are not safe because that would be bad for business and obviously just stupid. But
Yeah.
but absolutely, the number one concern for women traveling alone is safety. So we do offer a safer experience because you're in a group. It obviously it is if there was somebody to be concerned about when you're walking home, let's say in Morocco, which I did one time. I did go there by myself. And it got a little sketchy, even in Marrakesh just one night. And it wasn't that there was anything necessarily wrong, but you start to feel a little worried. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have that when you're in a group, obviously. And then we go, especially, when we are going to a little bit more developing countries, shall we say. I always have a guide, a local guide. I mean, I always have a guide, a knowledgeable local guide, as well as our trip leader. So we've got that. We take vans. Or chauffeured situations, usually to and from dinner, so you're not walking at night. But I do want to alert people because I think because of the news, we're all very, especially in the US, stressed out, nervous, anxious, overly worried, overly fearful. Because if you look at the stats for the safest countries in the world, and actually we're just doing a newsletter about that coming up, safest countries in the world for a woman to travel solo. There none of them are the U.S. actually. So we are 139th on a list of 174 countries. That's how
Wow.
unsafe
Yeah.
it is in the U.S. So you kind of start thinking because you live in, I don't know, Arkansas, wherever you live, you think it's safe because you're used to it. It's actually not very safe here,
Yeah. Yep.
statistically, compared to a lot of other countries in the world. Like Colombia is safer than the United States where you live.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it is, and I do like to put stats out there because I think the preconceived notions that we have in our head that do cause us the fear and stop us from doing things are often completely wrong.
Yeah.
Another thing that stops people is, and just to, in addition to the safety factor, is they worry, will I get along with these people that I have never met? So it's sort of that social anxiety, kind of like when you go to a cocktail party and you don't really know anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And will they like me? It's kind of that fourth grade cafeteria fear that, you're sitting at the uncool table and nobody wants to sit with you. And we all have a little bit of that trauma from school. Even if you were the most popular kid in school, everybody has one day where they felt like, the misfit and the uncool one. So
Right.
that's
And
another
I
thing
and I
women ask me.
suspect, Donnie, I suspect I'm envisioning, like, okay, the woman we were just speaking to that is going to go get her passport today might imagine herself
Yeah.
sitting in a restaurant in Paris with, 8, 9 other women who've been all over the world and have explored, and am I going to be that one that's like, can't, like, I'm just sitting here listening to all these other women talk about all the amazing places they've been, all the cool things they've done, and I've never left Arkansas until today, or until 3 days
Yeah.
ago when I got on the plane. I'm imagining that could be very intimidating, and like, how am I going to fit in?
Absolutely.
And I know that you've
And
seen it probably on
yeah.
every trip you've done.
Yep, absolutely. Because we did a trip to Namibia. One lady had been to 150 countries. So that's like 70 more countries than I've been to.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I said, well, you should obviously be working with us. And then other people who've never been to Africa at all. But that happens on every trip because you're going to have a mix between, young, middle age, older, wiser, people who are, really go-getters who've traveled all around, people who are much more timid, who are more, and just didn't have the time, the money, or the wherewithal, whatever reason. We train all of our facilitators. So I do lead some I lead some trips still, but we have 20 other women who do. We actually just recently had a training with a coach because we want to establish a safe sisterhood kind of environment. So each night you're going to sit next to someone else, get to know them so that you can bond with each and every person on the trip as well as the whole group as a whole. Plus, we have a personal acknowledgement form that we ask everybody to read and sign before they go on the trip. And it sets up the trip and the group dynamic in the way that we're saying to you, this trip is about bonding, is about supporting each person wherever they're at. So we emphasize that it's not just you're coming on a trip, you're coming on a group experience. And and people understand that because we stress it a lot on the website. We make sure that you read that and signed it and that you understand that if you're that person who's been to 150 countries, you will never ever make that other lady from Arkansas feel lesser than. You're just going to be excited. You're going to encourage her and you're going to say, if I can do it, you can too. And that is the type of lady that we attract. People who support each other. I will not tolerate anything else.
Very, very cool. I think I'm happy that subject came up because I know that's the story. I mentioned my mom earlier. We've had conversations about, well, if I go on this group, what's that going to be like? So thank you for bringing that up. There are so many things you and I could discuss, but we don't have enough time to discuss all of them on this episode. Maybe we'll have you come back. But what are the top, is there something, is there a question I forgot to ask, should have asked, or something really specific that you want to make sure we share with our listeners before we wrap up?
No, what I do want to say are the sort of which I think make us special beyond this big attention that we pay to group dynamic and to, sisterhood, which is the overarching and most important thing. But the fact that our groups are small, 6 to 10, we never take more than 10. Why? Because when you have 12, when you have 15, and of course, it's much more affordable to go with a group of 40 than it is a group of 8, right? It just obviously makes sense. But when you have a group of 12, 20, 40, you're never going to bond with that whole group. You can't possibly get to know everybody. And then you've got little cliques. There's a group of 3, there's a group of 4, and there's one maybe who's left out. That does not happen on our trips. And that's another really important part of the group dynamic. But we are also staying in 4 and 5-star hotels. You have wine, 2 glasses of wine included with dinner. Almost all your meals are included. So for the person, for the mom, for the busy, lawyer or doctor or whoever she is out there who doesn't have time to plan a trip, this is such an easy thing to do. You just sign up and you show up as long as you have that passport. And then your job is just to figure out what you want to drink, what you want to eat that night, and how many interesting people you get to talk to. I mean, I do think it's a ready-made plan for women to go out and meet each other, empower them to see the world, and to go for it, really, in this moment that you are alive, to seize the day. Because the other thing that we have seen in science, and you've seen it recently, I was just quoted in an article in the Huffington Post, and it's been all over the place about how science is showing that travel, getting away, pattern interrupt from your daily life is life extending. So you have a much better chance of living longer if you invest in yourself in this way. It's really, really important. This is a matter of life and death. It's not a frivolity to go to Scotland. So it keeps you a lot. It's true. I mean, you can see it. It helps with depression. It helps, and it's scientifically proven. So now we don't need to say, I am indulging or whatever. This is just as important as going to the doctor, eating right, eating healthy. It's taking time for yourself. It doesn't have to be on my trip. You could just, go take a road trip to California. Just do anything to get out of that same pattern. Exactly.
And the connection, it's a huge part of it is the pattern, but it's also the connection. Because in this, the connection is an issue.
Is huge.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. If you look at, I'm going to sit at my house and not leave the house for a year, or I'm going to go take a week or two and go meet a group of women and have new adventures and experiences and stuff like that. You need that. It's like you said, it's not indulging. I don't think, I mean, I recognize finances are finances and different people have different resources. Sure. I get that. And that's why you said, just go do something. So Doni, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Look forward to having another conversation with you in the future and collaborating with you on some projects. Super great conversation. And I hope a lot of women are listening and a lot of men, because a lot of what you said is for everybody. Maybe they're not going to go on your ladies only trip, but if anybody listening to this it should resonate with them. So Doni, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And I just want to shout out the website, which is Girls Guide to the World, TO, the world. And on our contact page, you can see our social media as well as a private women's only Facebook group where we cheer each other on to go out there and realize your dreams. So thank you so much, Jason, for the time. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. And we will have the website link in the show notes. So if you didn't get a chance to write that down, just look in the show notes and go over to Doni's website. And thank you so much, Doni. We'll chat with you soon.
Thank you.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.